Good morning and welcome to today. Today we're going to talk about lesson 8.5, factoring by using the distributive property. We're used to using the distributive property to multiply a polynomial by a monomial, but now we're going to use it to express a polynomial in factored form. So we're going to review some terms like finding the greatest common factor, and we're going to go through a couple of methods. Today's lesson is only going to be part 1. We will finish the lesson tomorrow. So I am going to go over a few concepts today and leave part 2 of the lesson. So we're going to get started right here, and we're going to start with an easy example. Factor by using the distributive property. Our first problem is we want to factor 2x squared plus 4x. So we want to factor 2x squared plus 4x. Okay, we have to realize that 2x squared plus 4x is the original expression. The second thing that we would do is we would find the GCF, which is the greatest common factor. What is the biggest thing that 2x squared and 4x have in common? Now, I know many people are looking at it, and you can tell that the biggest thing that 2x squared and 4x both can be divided by would be 2x. However, if you're not sure what the GCF is, you go through these steps. You prime factor each term. So if we were to prime factor 2x squared, it would break down to 2 times x times x. If we were to prime factor 4x, it would break down to 2 times 2 times x. And over here, if you need me to do the factor tree for you, I can. Are y'all with me? Y'all remember the factor tree? Yes? And 4x would factor as x times 4, and 4 breaks down to 2 times 2. Now we look to see what it is that they have in common. They each have 1, 2, and they each have 1 x. So the greatest common factor would be 2 times x, or 2x. So we have the original expression. We have found the greatest common factor by prime factoring out each term, seeing what they have in common, and multiplying that together. Now we look at the original expression. We draw a parenthesis with a blank line outside for the GCF. I like to call this the skeleton. The skeleton. And it's going to look like this. So here's my line outside. Look at your original expression. There were 2 terms, so there will be 2 blanks on the inside of the parentheses. Because the original expression had an addition sign, we will put an addition sign here as well. So now it looks like blank, parentheses, blank plus blank. Now what did we say went outside of the parentheses? What are we going to put there? GCF. The GCF. And we already found the GCF. What is the GCF? The GCF is 2x, so 2x is going to go right here. Now I have to figure out what am I going to put on these 2 blanks. So I'm going to use an analogy. If your mom cooks or your dad cooks or whoever cooks at your house, sometimes you have food, you don't eat it all, and you have what we call leftovers. Anybody ever have leftovers? So it depends upon what your family's policy is. I actually save the leftovers because we take them to lunch, or we eat them again one night. Everything that was left over from those last few days, we just take it all out, heat it all up, and eat it. All right, so the leftovers from the first term, which is 2x squared, go on the first shelf of the refrigerator. I know that's really pushing it, but I'm trying to give you something to help you remember. Then I go to the second term. The leftovers, which were not included in my GCF, from the second term go on the second shelf. Now when you get to this point right here, which is what is inside of the parentheses, they should have nothing in common but the number 1. They should share no other factors. That's how you know you have factored it completely. This right here, guys, is your answer. 2x times the quantity x plus 2. 2x times the quantity x plus 2. So let's go ahead and let me just make one more point that's extremely important. If there are no leftovers, by that I mean this. If you had used the 2, the x, and the other x, and there was nothing left, and you have to put something on that blank space inside of those parentheses, you would put a 1. We would not put a 0. Oh, well, there was nothing left. I'm going to put 0. Because watch what happens when you go to check your work. When you check your work, 2x times x should give me back 2x squared. 2x times 2 should give me back 4x, and it does. Now, some of you are going to say, but Miss Arceau, I'm going to go ahead and just say that the GCF is 2, and when I multiply it out, I'm still going to get the right answer. Yeah, you will. I agree with you, but you didn't factor it completely, because what's left in parentheses can have nothing in common but a factor of 1. So I think that the steps are extremely clear. I tried to use an analogy to help you. So let's go ahead and try to do one together. So let's look at this problem right here. 27y squared plus 18y. And the directions again will read factor completely. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to find the GCF, which is the greatest common factor of 27y squared and 18y. To find the GCF, we prime factor 27y squared. So if you don't remember, we're just going to take a walk down here and do it again. 27y squared breaks down to 3 times 9. 9 breaks down to 3 times 3. And y squared breaks down to y times y. So the prime factors of 27y squared would be 3 times 3 times 3 times y times y. The prime factors of 18y would be 2 times 9. 9 breaks down to 3 times 3 times y. And those are all prime numbers or prime factors. Now it's time to look and see what they have in common. They have 1 3, another 3, and a y. To find the GCF, we multiply those together. So this would be 3 times 3 times y, or my GCF would be what, guys? 9y. And so my GCF goes right here outside of the parentheses. So now I'm looking for leftovers to pack up and put away. What are the leftovers? Please raise your hand if you know. Of 27y squared. What are the leftovers right here in the front? 3 times y or 3y. What are the leftovers of 18y? 2. Now look at what's in parentheses. Do 3y and 2 have anything in common besides the number 1? No? So you have factored this correctly. Now to check your work, watch what you would do. You would use the distributive property, and because what's in parentheses has nothing in common but a factor of 1, when you go ahead to check your work, you should get back, and you do, 27y squared plus 18y. Does anyone have a question? Okay, now that I've gone through it twice, let's let you do one. Let me give you a good one to do. Alrighty, so let's give you guys one to try. And you can do it right in your notes. Let's try 9x squared plus 3x. Everybody try 9x squared plus 3x. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw my skeleton. And I'm going to find my GCF. He's going to go outside the parentheses, and then I'm going to fill everything in. I really don't want you guys doing it in your head, because now I'm going to give you a problem in a few minutes where you can't. I'm going to give you 3 and 4 terms that you have to factor. So I really need you guys, if I'm giving you notes and I'm giving you steps, it's important, even people listening online, it's really important that you guys take the time and you write this down. Okay. What's the GCF? If you know, raise your hand. What's the GCF? Thank you, in the back. 3x is correct. Where's the GCF going to go? Who can tell me, where am I putting the GCF? Thank you.
On the first line.
Outside the parentheses on the first line. Good. What are the leftovers from the first term? What's left? 3 times x or 3x. What are the leftovers from the second term? There are no leftovers, so the only thing that you would put there, and you were correct, when the leftovers are all gone, there's nothing left, you put a 1 there. And that is the completed factored form of 9x squared plus 3x. Okay? Let's try one that's a little bit more challenging. So let's look at one that has 3 terms. 3 terms. Negative 4a squared b minus 8ab squared plus 2ab. Okay, so let me just go ahead and give you something here that's extremely important. So when factoring out and you have a negative term, you always have to take out the negative one first. Let's everybody remember that the number 1 is neither prime nor composite. So your prime numbers would be numbers like 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. A prime number, again, is a number that only has factors of 1 and itself. A composite number has factors more than 1 and itself. So a negative number is not a prime number. So in order to factor it correctly, make sure you put that in your notes. In order to factor it correctly, you have to take out a negative 1 first. So negative 4a squared b would factor as negative 1 times 2 times 2 times a times b. Negative 8ab squared would factor as negative 1 times 2 times 2 times 2 times a times b. And 2ab would factor as 2 times a times b. In order to find the greatest common factor, we look to see what terms or what prime numbers or variables they all have in common. They all have a 2, correct? They all have an a, correct? And they all have a b. So the GCF would be 2ab. So to factor this, everybody watch and look. To factor this, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my parentheses. This time I've drawn 3 blanks because there are 3 terms in the original expression. If there were 4 terms, how many blanks would I draw, guys?
4.
If there were 5, I would draw.
5.
If there were 2, I would draw.
2.
Good job. Now I take the GCF, which is 2AB, and I place it outside the parentheses on the blank. That's where the GCF goes, outside. All right, now I look at the first term, negative 4a squared b. What's left over? A negative 1 times 2 times a, which gives me what? Negative 2a. Good job. Then I look at the leftovers from negative 8ab squared, which would be negative 1 times 2 times b, or what? Negative 4b. Okay, so there's already a minus sign here, so you're not going to go minus a negative. You're just going to leave the subtraction sign, minus 4b. And the last term, there are no leftovers, and we already established the fact when all the leftovers are gone, what do we put? A plus 1. Now you can go back real quickly and check your work, and so I'll just help you. 2ab times a negative 2a would give me back a negative 4a squared b. 2ab times a minus 4b would give me a negative 8b squared, and 2ab times 1 would give me a 2ab. What I really want you to get in the habit of doing is looking at what is in the parentheses and making sure that there is nothing left that these 3 terms have in common except for the number 1. And that's how you know you have factored it completely. Does anybody have a question? Are you sure? All right, let me just check one thing real quickly here before I move on, because I have some time, so I may go ahead and teach a little bit more because it's going extremely well. So let's just look and see. So I've given you tonight for homework skills practice 1 through 12 and practice 1 through 6. And those are all factoring. Okay, those are all factoring. Are there any questions up to this point? Okay, I am going to take it one step further. So let's just go back here. I do want to spend a little bit of time on what we call, I'm going to save the other factoring by grouping for tomorrow, but I want to spend a little bit of time on what is called the zero product property rule. The zero product property rule from today and forever will be referred to as zipper. Zipper. And what this is saying is, in order for you to multiply 2 things together and get the answer, or the product is equal to 0, then one of those must be equal to 0. Does that make sense? So everybody look, if I had the number 8 over here, and then I had a parentheses with x in it, 8 times some number x equals 0. 8 times x equals 0. I don't think it takes much for us to figure out that x must equal what? 0. Good job. So what we want to do here is take a couple of steps and to show you how do you find the answer. What is the solution? What could possibly x equal? So I'm going to take that first example with you. X times the quantity, was it x plus 4? Yes. X plus 4 equals 0. So this is the original equation. The directions will ask you to solve. They are not going to tell you to use the zero product property rule. But whenever you have an equation equal to 0, that is exactly what they're asking you. They want you to solve it. Zero product property rule. Here we go. Take each factor, set it equal to 0, and solve. So basically, what you're doing is you're writing too many equations. You're writing too many equations. So let me just go ahead and show you what it's going to look like. So the first equation would be, and I'm just going to rewrite this just to exaggerate so you all know that there are actually two factors. But Mrs. Urso, how? Well, that x outside is considered a factor. So the first equation I would write would be x equals 0. Remember, you take each factor, set it equal to 0, and solve. Well, that's a no-brainer. So one answer is x equals 0. Equation number 2 is my second parentheses, or x plus 4 equals 0. I would subtract 4 from each side, and I get x equals negative 4. So now I have two solutions, and I write my answer in set builder notation. The order in which you list them does not matter. However, it is most correct to list the smaller number first, which would be negative 4. Now let me just show you how you can check your work. So everybody look up here. If I put a 0 in for x, that would be 0 times 0 plus 4, or 0 times 4 would give me what? 0. If I put a negative 4 here, what does negative 4 plus 4 give me? 0 times negative 4 also equals 0. Are you with me? All right, let's let you try. Solve x times x minus 9 equals 0. And we'll do another one too. This time is 2 parentheses, x plus 3 times x minus 4 equals 0. So Kylan, what did you get for the first one? X equals 0 and x equals what? There's two answers. You have the other answer? X equals 0 and x equals 9. Good. What did somebody get for the second one? X plus 3 times x minus 4 equals 0. Anybody? What did you get? Yes. Okay. X plus 3 equals 0. So you would have to subtract 3 from each side. So it would not be a positive 3, but a what? Go ahead, correct yourself. Negative 3 and 4. Are you guys with me? Okay, so one more time. Let me go through it, please. One more time. When given a letter, a variable outside the parentheses, and a parentheses equal to 0, the variable outside is going to count as a factor. That's why the first equation is x equals 0, and the second equation is x minus 9 equals 0, getting two solutions. When given two separate parentheses, like x plus 3 times x minus 4 equals 0, take each parentheses separately, set it equal to 0, and solve. And I think that we could probably do this in our head, because what plus 3 would equal 0? It's going to be the opposite of 3, or negative 3. What minus 4 would be equal to 0? The opposite of negative 4 would be 4. Okay? Was there a question? What is it? Okay, I already explained it. I said to you that the order in which you put in set builder does not matter. However, it's most correct to put the smaller number first, just like we've been doing all year. Okay? I have one more I want you to do. C squared equals 3C. C squared equals 3C. The directions say solve. To solve, you have to get one side equal to 0. And I'll give you a hint. You want to keep, in this case, the C squared term positive. So what should I do to both sides of this equation so that I can have one side equal to 0? What should I do? Thank you so much. Subtract 3C from each side, and now I have C squared minus 3C equals 0. Okay. Hey, that looks great, but it's not factored. That's a great observation. So now I must factor by the distributive property. So now it's going to look just like what we did at the very, very beginning of the lesson. We must factor it first. Okay? How many terms are there? 2 terms. So I make my skeleton. I think you can all figure this one out. What is the GCF of C squared and 3C? What do they have in common? A C. So my GCF goes out here. What goes in the first blank? What goes in the second blank? A 3. So now it is in factored form, which means now I can use the zero product property rule. And so my first equation, who can write my first equation for me? What would it be? Yes. Nice. And what would my second equation be? Somebody else. Somebody else. Thank you, Rachel. C minus 3 equals 0, and to solve for C, I would add 3 to each side. So I have 2 solutions, and what are they, guys? 0 and 3, and I would place them in step builder notation. Well, this concludes our lesson for today. I am going to go over the zero product property rule again tomorrow, as well as introduce to you factoring by grouping. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.